As we start getting closer to December 20th, as the finale of the Skywalker saga gets ready to come at us just full force, right? The question then starts to be asked, and it's been asked for a while, but it's going to be brought up a lot more now. And that is, and I think the CNET article here has a good headline for it: the new Star Wars trilogy is worse than the prequels. Lessons Disney failed to learn from George Lucas at his worst. And the truth of the matter is, only one of those movies was Lucas at his worst, and that was The Phantom Menace. Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith are much better than I think people give them credit for, but it took time to get there. It took time to look back through hindsight, or through just maybe rose-colored glasses, or just more of a less in the moment, more critical view of the films, to get a better solid understanding for what Lucas was attempting to do. And that is where the new trilogy, the sequel trilogy, fails. It doesn't have a plan, at least a plan that we know of yet. Now, we only have two movies to really go on here, but what we know about those two movies are, yeah, there is no plan. So going back to the prequel trilogy, Lucas started writing episode 1 in 1994, 5 years before its release. So he had a long time to work on what he wanted to say, how he wanted to say it, and he still failed across the board in regards to just dialogue. It was so bad, the dialogue, but the core part of the story was good. The narrative aspect of The Phantom Menace is good. It's one of the reasons why we still go back and watch it, not simply just out of nostalgia, but because it was decent enough to set up the future, and it was a future that we already knew what was going to happen, which is, again, another thing that had us kind of going, okay, fine. When we know how something is going to end, we feel more comfortable in watching it. Trailers actually do this all the time. They will show you the full movie. They will show you each act in like either a trailer or different trailers. And by the time you watch everything, you feel like you've seen it all. And the reason for that is because you have. And they know this through studies that people actually want to know what they're going to see before they go and see it. People hate surprises. And this is true. Maybe that's one of the reasons why the prequel trilogy is looked at now more affectionately than the sequel trilogy, because we knew where the prequel trilogy was ultimately going to go. Yes, we're watching the rise of Anakin Skywalker and ultimately the fall of Skywalker, and the rise of Vader, and the rise of the Empire, and the rise of Darth Sidious and the Emperor, and the fall of the Jedi, and all of those things. We saw all of those things happen, but we already knew that they were going to happen. The difference, though, is learning how they happened. And that was the fascinating aspect of the prequels. Lucas, love him or hate him, wanted to tell a political story. And that's what he did. A lot of episode 2 and episode 3, specifically episode 2, was more about politics. There was a running gag back in 2002 when there was that vote of no confidence against the chancellor, and then at that time Senator Palpatine took over the Republic, that Jar Jar had been the one to cast the final vote for that, and everyone referred to Jar Jar Binks as the Dan Quayle of the Star Wars universe, which to most people went right over their heads. If you were around in the early 90s in the Bush administration, you knew who Dan Quayle was. It was a thing we all lived with here. But anyway, a lot of it was politics. It was very much political and trying to show us what could potentially happen. If you look at what Freddie Prinze Jr. said in regards to his rant from that podcast that was making its way around the last couple of days, he brings up Greek mythology. Lucas studied Greek mythology. A lot of what happened in Star Wars is very much referenced in Greek mythology. It pulled a lot from it. It just took it to a future instead of the past. And that's how he was choosing to do it. And that was fascinating, how that there were themes and that there were characters that were very similar like those in the Greek mythologies. So again, that's a lot of how he was crafting it. May not have been the best dialogue wise, but narratively speaking, it's held up over all these years. Look, The Phantom Menace is 20 years old. I'll go back and rewatch it. I'm not going to necessarily like it, but I'm entertained all the way through because I know that eventually I'll get to Attack of the Clones, which I've come to very much like, and then get to Revenge of the Sith, which I outright love. So, and then of course go right into the original trilogy, which is all golden for me anyway. But then we get to like the sequel trilogy. And the biggest problem, the biggest thing that Disney didn't learn, the biggest way it failed George Lucas is that they didn't have a plan. Or they did have a plan, but they chose to not follow the plan. And this is where things are well known, well documented. But at the same time, we as fans are left with this like 2-year gap of going, wait, what? Like, how did that happen? Like, what do you mean Luke died? What do you mean like Leia had this? What do you mean all these things went down? Where was that even remotely freaking explained? And that's because what JJ had set up, I think if it would have been, if Rian Johnson would have followed the plan that JJ had outlined, and would have gone and used those notes and not done and crafted his own thing, I think that episode 8 would have probably been well received. I'm at the point now where I think if you cut out the Mary Poppins scene and you cut out Luke's death, after that, you could pretty much argue it's not as bad of a movie. The Luke's death thing is really what bothers a lot of people, but I think those two elements kind of cut out. If you would have killed Princess Leia in that explosion and basically reversed everything, I think people would have walked away going, not great, but okay. But at the end of the day, what you had was an executive who doesn't know how to run a franchise, a director who she hired, who she trusted, who delivered this well-crafted tale. But the difference between Rian Johnson and George Lucas is that Johnson focused more on his individual story rather than the grand narrative that JJ had set up or what they had set up. And this was a failing that Bob Iger kind of talked about with George Lucas. Lucas's plans, his outlines for the sequel trilogy for 7, 8, and 9 were very weird. If you look at the whole midichlorian thing and how they wanted to go in the microbiotics and they wanted to do all that stuff was kind of weird. I'm not going to say necessarily good, but he had a plan. And I think if he would have spent this time working out that plan, we would have probably, again, 10 years down the road, been able maybe to look back at that and go, okay, maybe it's not as bad as our expectations were in that moment, right? Because it's not hard to go back and look at a movie a couple years down the road when your expectations have settled, you've already seen it, so you know what's coming, and then you can look at the finer details. See, I've gone back and looked at the prequel trilogy with the finer details. And that's one of the reasons why I've grown to enjoy the Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith a lot more, because I've been able to see what Lucas was attempting to do versus what I believe he was creatively able to do from a filmmaking perspective. Johnson is the exact opposite. The dude can't tell a story to save his life, but he knows how to direct real well. And that was the key problem there, is they didn't have the plan. That is how they failed Lucas. That's how they failed fans. But that's also what kind of has me a little bit more excited for the future. As weird as it is, I am so hype for the Rise of Skywalker because it can't be any worse. It cannot be any worse. For one, JJ is a crowd pleaser. He knows what the audience generally wants, so he will deliver it. He will give us enough nostalgia to where we're happy, maybe a few surprises so that we're really happy. And he'll be able to maybe finish up this story. Like the Knights of Ren are going to be in this movie, but they're not going to take their helmets off. So, they're just there. Okay, cool. They're finally there. Cool beans. Maybe we'll get a little bit more backstory with them, something along those lines. He'll give us something there to at least quench our thirst for right now. I don't know if it's going to be a satisfying conclusion, but I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. Because even though a lot of people don't like The Force Awakens, I can go back and look at The Force Awakens, see what him and Lawrence Kasdan were attempting to do, and find myself still very much enjoying it. Now, is that because it's heavily inspired by and influenced by A New Hope, which is one of my all-time favorite movies? Yeah, probably. Is it nostalgia-based and everything else like that? Yeah, probably. And I can admit that. It's not, I can't go and do that with the Last Jedi. I've tried. You guys have no fucking idea how much I have tried to get on board with that film. And I think it's because it's a fractured story. It's a fractured mess, right? Like when we went and saw a Phantom Menace in 1999, and it was like, oh my God, man, Jar Jar Binks is the best thing ever. Don't lie, you said it too. And then we waited a couple years and that kind of died down a little bit. Like, okay, the dialogue's a bit wonky. Some of the stereotypal voices are a little bit on the racist side. I mean, like, you know what I mean? It was pretty bad. And then you watch Attack of the Clones and you're all like, okay, like it's, yeah, maybe not as good, but you still know where it's going. You still know how it's going to end up. You still know what's going to happen. You still know where it's going to go. And by that time, you were on board with it. You were already hooked into the roller coaster. This is the problem that JJ Abrams, Kathleen Kennedy, and the rest of Lucasfilm had. How do you end a saga started by somebody else and carried over almost 40 years? How do you do that? And Bob Iger's book, he says he feels JJ did the best he could do by bridging that gap. And that's where I believe Bob Iger. What I'm hoping is that JJ will look at what the fans didn't quite care for with The Last Jedi, which was one of the reasons why there's almost no Rose Tico in the marketing. And that's not Kelly Marie Tran's fault. I truly feel bad for her. She's, they've got her in the movie because they kind of have to. And then after that, they're not going to do much with her. And it's mostly the core group of people on an adventure together. And that's going to be great. But I think what he's going to do is he's going to give us what we want as fans. He's going to look at what made probably Return of the Jedi great. And he's going to probably pull a lot from those kind of things and give us a big action packed adventure and a way to finally close out the Skywalker saga. I think JJ Abrams will give us maybe not what we want, but ultimately what we need for closure. And that's why I'm hype. And I don't think Colin Trevorrow could have potentially done it. I think he walked away because of the problems with The Last Jedi, because he probably couldn't crack that code. Because JJ had a plan. And there's a lot of luck that went into the fact that Rian Johnson's movie took place over the span of like 18 hours or whatever, and it took place the day after The Force Awakens. So they have wiggle room to play with and a time jump to do. And I think that's really going to help. So yeah, Disney Star Wars failed George Lucas. The prequels were a roadmap, I think, to understanding where George Lucas's mind is. But upon retrospectively, looking back, I really liked them. Not so much Phantom Menace. I've tried. Again, I love a lot about it, but it's still just like, it's Lucas should have had Spielberg direct that or somebody else direct that or something. Anyway, those are just my thoughts about this one. I just wanted to put it out there. What do you guys think? If you made it this far, do me a solid. Type in Lucas into the chat so I know, and leave a like, leave a comment, dislike it if you want. Let me know why. And I'll talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day, and peace out.